On May 18, 2023, the police received a call from neighbors. Residents of a quiet neighborhood reported a strange situation in one of the houses. A family lives there, but something is wrong with this family. Two officers arrived at the address, an ordinary two-story house. They knocked. The door was not opened for a long time. Then a woman appeared on the doorstep. According to documents, she was 35 years old, but she looked much older. One could easily guess 50. An emaciated face, gray strands in her hair. Behind her stood three others, two boys and a girl. The eldest was 14, the middle 11, the youngest 9. They silently looked at the police officers, detachedly. The officers introduced themselves. The woman invited them inside. The house was almost empty. Little furniture, few belongings. The police began to ask questions. "What is your name? Who are these three?" The woman introduced herself as Maria. She said that the three were her younger brothers and sister. Her parents had died. Her mother 2 years ago, her father 3 months ago. One of the officers asked directly, why were the neighbors worried? Maria was silent for a long time. The three behind her stood motionless. Then she said she wanted to make a statement, an official one. She said that these three were not her brothers and sister. They were her son and daughters, and their father was her own father. The officers asked her to repeat. Maria repeated, clearly. She had given birth to 3 children by her own father. For the past 15 years, she had lived in this house practically locked away. Her father controlled her every step. Her stepmother knew and kept silent. The police asked to see the house. Maria led them to the basement. There was a small room set up, a bed, a dresser, a chair, one small window near the ceiling. Maria said this had been her room all these years. The officers checked the door. No locks, neither from the outside nor from the inside. Formally, she could leave whenever she wanted, but Maria explained her father had instilled in her that if she tried to leave, he would find and punish her. She believed it for 15 years. The police recorded her testimony, photographed the room, called social workers. Maria and the 3 children were taken to a safe place. The next day, a criminal case was opened. A genetic examination was ordered. It was necessary to confirm the relationship documented. The examination takes several weeks. Investigators retrieved documents. It turned out all 3 were registered as Maria's younger brothers and sister. Their mother on paper was Olga, Maria's stepmother. Their father was Victor. But there was a critical point. Victor had died 3 months before the statement. He could not be questioned. He could not be arrested. The investigation worked only with what remained: documents, testimonies, circumstantial evidence. Olga was alive. She was summoned for questioning. She had to explain how all of this could have happened in the house where she lived. The interrogation was scheduled for the following week. And this was the first step to understanding how deep this story went, and how a family on an ordinary street turned into a place where no laws existed. Investigators began to reconstruct the past. They needed to understand who these people were before everything changed. They requested archives, school documents. They interviewed neighbors and family acquaintances. The first thing they found was a school photo from the archives. 2008, 9th grade. Maria stood in the center of a group of students. She was 15 then. In the photo, she was smiling. An ordinary student. Light hair, braided, sports uniform. Nothing foreshadowed. Investigators interviewed her former classmates. They remembered Maria as quiet but sociable. She had friends. She attended an athletics section. participated in school events. The ordinary life of an ordinary teenager. Then they started gathering information about the father. Victor worked at a factory, a third-grade fitter. Stable job, average salary. Colleagues characterized him as taciturn and withdrawn. There were no conflicts, but no friends either. He came, did his job, left. Neighbors remembered him differently. Strict, very strict. One neighbor recounted how he once saw Victor reprimanding Maria right on the street. She had dropped something from a bag of groceries. Victor stood over her, speaking sharply while she picked it up. Neighbors preferred not to communicate with this family. Victor did not greet first, did not initiate contact. The stepmother, Olga, was a housewife. She did not work, stayed at home. Neighbors hardly ever saw her. She went to the store once every few days, always alone, spoke in monosyllables. When asked something ordinary, about the weather, about the news, she answered briefly and left. No attempts to make friends. One of the neighbors recalled a moment that seemed strange then, but nothing more. It was in 2009. She met Olga near the entrance, asked how her stepdaughter was doing, hadn't seen her in the yard for a long time. Olga replied, "Everything is fine, just a lot of studying," and quickly left. No one raised the topic again. Another neighbor said a phrase that investigators recorded verbatim. In that family, the father decided everything. Everything. Olga was like a shadow. Maria also always kept silent. He spoke, they did. Investigators requested documents from the school, the 9th grade class register. They found an entry. October 12th, 2008, the last day Maria attended classes. After this date, there were dashes in the register. Every day, a month, 2, 3. In December 2008, the class teacher recorded an official reason for absence in the documents. It was provided by Victor personally. He came to the school, said that Maria was seriously ill, could not attend classes. He did not bring a doctor's note, promised to bring it later. He never brought it later. The class teacher called home several times. Victor answered the phone, said that Maria's condition was not improving, that she was receiving treatment at home, that as soon as she got better, she would return to her studies. The teacher offered help. Perhaps some documents were needed for homeschooling. Victor refused, said they would manage themselves. By the spring of 2009, the calls stopped. Maria was officially listed as having left school due to health reasons. No one checked. No one insisted. The system worked formally. Documents were there. The father explained the reason. No questions arose. One of Maria's former friends recounted trying to visit her at home. This was in November 2008, a month after Maria stopped going to school. She came to their house, rang the doorbell. Victor opened it. The friend asked if she could see Maria. Victor said that Maria was feeling very unwell and could not receive guests. He closed the door. The friend tried a few more times. The result was the same. After some time, she stopped trying. Investigators compared the dates. Maria stopped attending school in October 2008. She was 15 then. The first of the three was born in July 2009. A simple calculation showed that everything began precisely during the period when she disappeared from public view. This was the last moment when someone could have intervened, when teachers could have insisted on a check, when friends could have continued to try, when neighbors could have asked more questions, but no one did. And from October 2008, Maria effectively ceased to exist for the outside world. Her life went inside the house on a quiet street, where the only law was Victor's word. Investigators asked Maria to describe what happened after October 2008. She agreed to give detailed testimony. A psychologist was present at all interrogations.
Maria spoke calmly, without emotion, as if telling someone else's story. First, the investigators asked her to describe the house, to draw a floor plan, to show where and who lived. Maria took a sheet of paper, drew a diagram: ground floor, kitchen, living room, Victor and Olga's bedroom, bathroom. Second floor, 2 rooms. One was empty, the second was for guests who never came. Basement, her room. She pointed to the basement, said, "All these years passed here." Investigators asked her to tell how it began. Maria explained. October 2008. She stopped going to school not because of illness. Victor simply told her one morning, "You won't go anymore. That's it." Maria didn't understand, asked why. Victor replied, "Because I said so." There were no explanations. The first few days she thought it was temporary, that her father would change his mind, tried to talk about it. Victor ignored her. Olga kept silent.
A week later, Maria asked permission to go into the yard, just to get some air. Victor said no, categorically. Maria confessed she tried to go out herself. This was at the end of October. Victor had gone to work. Olga was home, but she was upstairs. Maria came down from the first floor, approached the front door. The door was locked. There were no keys. She looked for them, checked all the obvious places. Nothing. When Victor returned in the evening, he immediately understood. Maria never understood how. Maybe Olga told him. Maybe he just saw it on her face. He entered the house, approached her, hit her for the first time in her life. Maria told investigators until that moment her father had never used physical force. He was strict, controlling, but he didn't hit her. Then she understood something had changed, permanently. Victor took her phone, a simple push-button phone she had received a year ago. He took it and never returned it. Then he said, "Now you will live in the basement. That's your room." Maria asked why. Victor did not answer. He just led her downstairs. The room in the basement was ready beforehand. The bed was there, the dresser was there, everything was prepared. Maria realized it was planned, not a spontaneous decision. Victor had been preparing. The first few weeks she spent almost all her time in that room, only went out to the toilet and to the kitchen to eat, under supervision. Victor or Olga were always nearby. She tried to talk to Olga, asked why this was happening. Olga looked away and left. In November, things got worse. Victor began to come to her room in the evenings. Maria did not give details, only said he started doing what he shouldn't have done. Investigators did not insist. The psychologist noted in the protocol, the victim exhibits signs of post-traumatic stress when discussing this topic. Maria explained, the first time she tried to resist, Victor used force. The second time she tried again. The result was the same. The third time she understood. Resistance was useless. He was stronger. He controlled everything. Her life now depended on his decisions. She asked herself then, maybe scream? Maybe the neighbors would hear? Victor seemed to read her thoughts. Said, "You can try, but if someone comes, I'll say you're mentally ill, that you're making up stories. Who will they believe? An adult man with a job and a reputation, or a sick teenage girl?" Maria believed it. She truly thought no one would believe her, that she would stay in that house forever. By December, a routine was established. Victor came to her room several times a week. Olga continued to run the household as if nothing was happening, cooked food, cleaned, brought Maria food to her room. Sometimes their eyes met. Maria saw in her eyes, what? Fear? Indifference? She didn't know. In January 2009, Maria realized she was pregnant. She told Victor. He nodded, as if he expected it. Olga also found out. No reaction, no discussion, just a fact that everyone accepted. Investigators asked, did she think about an abortion? Maria replied, she did. But where was she to go? She couldn't leave the house. There was no phone, no connection to the outside world. She was completely isolated. She received minimal medical care. Olga took her to a doctor once, to a women's clinic, told the doctors it was her youngest daughter, that the father was unknown. The doctor didn't ask unnecessary questions, examined her, said everything was normal, scheduled a follow-up appointment in a month. There was no follow-up appointment. July 2009. Maria gave birth at home. Olga delivered the baby. She had no medical training, but she managed. The first of the three was born, a boy. Maria was 16 then. After that, life finally split into before and after. Before October 2008, there was an ordinary student with friends and dreams of the future.
After existence in the basement, where the only reality was four walls and Victor's visits, the outside world ceased to exist. For her, only this remained: the house, the room, and the man who decided when she ate, when she slept, when she lived. As investigators reviewed the case files, they came across a record in the archive, March 2009, a police call to Victor's family address. It turned out someone had already tried to intervene 12 years ago. Investigators pulled up the old report. The statement came from the school. Maria's class teacher contacted the police with an official request. She stated, "The student has been absent for 5 months. The father explains it as illness, but there are no medical certificates. Contact with the family is difficult." The teacher asked to check the situation. On March 15, 2009, 2 patrol officers arrived at the address. The time of the visit was 2:30 p.m., daytime, a workday. They knocked on the door. Victor opened it. He was at home. He had taken time off work specifically for this visit. The class teacher had warned him about the police visit in advance. The report recorded, Victor met the officers calmly, invited them into the house, offered them to sit down. The officers explained the reason for the visit. Victor nodded, said he understood the school's concern, explained the situation. According to him, his daughter was indeed seriously ill. Health problems started in October. At first, they thought it was a cold. Then her condition worsened. They consulted doctors. A precise diagnosis was not made. They recommended home rest and observation. The officers asked, "Where are the medical documents?" Victor replied, "There are certificates from a therapist." He went to another room, returned with a folder, showed several certificates. The dates on them corresponded to October-November 2008. A doctor's signature was present, the clinic's seal too. One of the officers recorded the certificate data.
The other asked, "Can we talk to your daughter?" Victor agreed immediately, called Maria. She came downstairs a few minutes later. The report described her condition: pale, thin, dressed in home clothes, sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair tied in a ponytail, stood in the doorway, looked at the floor. The officers introduced themselves, asked how she was feeling. Maria answered quietly, "Fine." Asked if it was true that she had been ill. Maria nodded, yes, she was ill. Asked why she wasn't going to school. Maria said, "I feel unwell. I get tired quickly." The officers asked a few more questions. Did she have any complaints? Was everything all right at home? Did she need any help? Maria answered in monosyllables, "No, everything is fine. No help is needed." Victor stood nearby, did not interfere, just present. Maria glanced at him several times, quickly. The officers noticed this. One of them asked to speak with Maria alone. Victor agreed, went into the kitchen.
When they were alone with Maria, the officer asked directly, "Were there any problems? You can speak honestly. If something is wrong, they would help." Maria was silent for a long time. Then she shook her head. No problems. The officer examined her carefully. There were no external signs of physical abuse, no bruises, no scratches. Her clothes were clean, not torn. Maria looked scared, but not visually traumatized. The officer tried again, asked, "Is everything really all right? If you need help, now is the time to say so." Maria looked at him. For the first time in the entire conversation, she looked him in the eyes and said, "Everything is fine, truly." They called Victor back. The officer said the inspection was complete. Victor thanked them for their visit, escorted them to the door. Maria remained standing in the hallway, did not move. In their report, the officers wrote, "A check was conducted at the address. The daughter was present at home. She answered questions." No signs of illegal actions were found. The father provided medical certificates. The situation is assessed as a family conflict of an educational nature. Recommendations: the family should contact Child Protective Services for consultation on homeschooling. The case was closed the same day. The school received a response. A check was conducted, no violations found. The class teacher received the official document. She read it several times. Something inside her told her that this was wrong. But what could she do? The police checked. The police said everything was fine. Investigators in 2023 studied this report, tried to find those officers. One had retired. The other had moved to another city. They contacted the first one. He vaguely remembered the visit, said there were dozens of such calls. Parents don't send their children to school. Teachers worry. You arrive, everything is quiet, everyone is alive, no conflicts. You close the case. He was asked, did anything seem strange? Perhaps it was worth digging deeper. The officer answered honestly. Maybe it was, but they had no grounds. The father was calm. Certificates were present. The daughter said everything was fine, no bruises. According to the protocol, they did everything correctly. Investigators understood this was the only moment when the system could have been stopped, when someone from outside could have noticed, could have saved Maria. But the moment was missed. After March 2009, this family was no longer remembered. The school dropped its concerns, the police closed the case, and in July of the same year, Maria gave birth to her first child, and the system that was supposed to protect her finally failed. Investigators began to compile a full profile of Victor. They needed to understand who this man was, what allowed him to create such a system and maintain it for 15 years. They requested his personal file from the factory where he had worked for 23 years, from 1998 to 2021. He resigned voluntarily 2 years before his death. The personal file contained standard information: secondary specialized education, profession, fitter, 3rd grade. No disciplinary actions, no commendations, just a straight line. But investigators were not interested in papers. They were interested in the people who worked with Victor. They found 3 former colleagues, arranged a meeting. The first, Sergei, worked the same shift as Victor for 8 years. His description was short, unsociable. Victor did not participate in general conversations, did not joke, did not share personal matters, came to his shift on time, did quality work, left immediately after the end of his shift, not a minute later, not a minute earlier. Sergei recalled one incident. It was in 2012. The factory was celebrating its anniversary, a corporate event in the canteen. Everyone gathered. Victor also came. Sat in a corner, did not eat, did not drink, just sat. After half an hour, he stood up and left.
Said nothing to anyone. The second colleague, Mikhail, described Victor differently, quick-tempered. Mikhail worked as a foreman and had to reprimand Victor several times for his work. Minor safety violations. Victor reacted sharply. He didn't yell, but he stared in a way that made you uncomfortable. Mikhail literally said his eyes were cold, as if looking through you. Once, Victor snapped. It was in 2015. Another worker accidentally bumped his tool, knocked it off its place. Victor turned around, grabbed the man by his jacket, raised his fist, didn't hit him, just held him for about 10 seconds, then let go, said, "Watch your hands," and went back to work. There were no more such incidents. The third colleague, Dmitry, noted his meticulousness. Victor kept his workspace in perfect order. Every tool lay strictly in its place. If someone took something without asking, Victor noticed it immediately, demanded it back, checked that everything was returned correctly.
Dmitry said, Victor had a notebook. He wrote everything down there. Start time of shift, end time, what he did during the day, what materials he used. Dmitry once asked, why so detailed? Victor replied, order is important. Without order, chaos. Investigators checked for criminal records. None. Victor had never been held criminally or administratively liable. No fines, no violations. Officially, he was a law-abiding citizen. Then investigators returned to Maria's testimony, asked her to describe the rules Victor had established in the house. Maria explained. There were many rules. Get up at 6 in the morning, always, even on weekends. Make the bed immediately after waking up. Wash with cold water. Eat breakfast strictly at 7 in the morning. If late, missed breakfast. Speak only when asked. Do not ask questions. Do not look out the windows. Victor covered the window in her room with a thick curtain. He checked this. If the curtain was moved even by a centimeter, he knew. Maria could not turn on the light after 9 in the evening. If Victor heard noise from her room after that time, he would come down, found out the reason. If the reason seemed disrespectful to him, he would punish her. Punishments varied. The most frequent, deprivation of food, missing 1 meal, sometimes 2. Once, Maria didn't hear him enter the room. She was sitting with a book she had secretly taken upstairs. Victor took the book, didn't let her eat all the next day. Physical punishments were also present. Maria did not go into detail, only said he hit her. Not often, but enough for her to understand resistance was useless. One of the investigators asked, why didn't she try to escape? Maria explained. Victor constantly reminded her if she tried, he would find her, and it would be much worse. He said this calmly, without threats in his voice, as a fact. Another point, Victor controlled her writing implements, paper, pens. Everything was with him. If Maria needed to write something, which happened rarely, she asked for permission. He gave her a sheet of paper and 1 pen. After use, he took them back, checked what was written. Maria confessed she once tried to write a note. This was in 2011. She thought about leaving it somewhere where someone might find it. Victor found the draft in the trash can. He didn't yell, just said, "Don't do that again," and didn't give her paper for 3 months. Investigators compiled a psychological profile. Victor was a classic controller, a pedant, paranoid, a person who needed to manage every aspect of the lives of those around him. At work, he couldn't do this. There were rules, superiors, colleagues. But at home, he created his own kingdom, where he set the rules. Olga obeyed. Maria was locked up. The 3 who were born later knew no other life. All 4 existed in a system where Victor was the sole source of decisions. He decided what they ate, when they slept, what they did.
He was a god in that house. Investigators recorded Victor was the main and only suspect. It was he who created this system. It was he who maintained it for years. But there was one problem. Victor had died 3 months ago. He could not be arrested. He could not be questioned. He could not be judged. He left behind only shattered lives and questions that now had to be answered without him. Investigators requested the birth certificates of all 3 children. The documents arrived 2 days later. The first was born on July 17, 2009. Name, Maxime. In the mother column, Olga was listed. In the father column, Victor. Officially, he was their son. But this was a lie. Investigators knew this from Maria's testimony. Now they needed to understand how exactly Victor had pulled off such a scheme, how he had hidden the real origin of the 3 for so many years. Maria was asked to describe her first pregnancy in detail. She agreed. The psychologist was again present at the interrogation.
Maria said she realized she was pregnant in January 2009. She was 16. Her period stopped. Nausea appeared in the mornings. She knew what that meant. She told Victor. He was not surprised, just nodded. Victor explained the plan to her. They would tell everyone that Olga was pregnant. Maria would stay at home. No one should see her. By the end of the pregnancy, she would stop coming out of the basement altogether. Olga would go to the women's clinic, get all the necessary documents, and when the time came, Maria would give birth at home, and the baby would be officially registered as the son of Olga and Victor. Maria asked then, what if something goes wrong? If there are complications? Victor replied, nothing will go wrong. You'll manage. Olga did indeed start visiting the women's clinic. She went there once a month. Doctors kept her chart, recorded data. Olga was 42 years old then. Doctors treated the pregnancy with attention. The age was risky. They recommended additional examinations. Olga refused them, said she felt well. Maria stayed at home all this time. Her pregnancy was difficult. The morning sickness was severe. For the first 3 months, she could hardly eat. Victor did not call doctors, said it will pass on its own. And indeed, by the 4th month, it became easier. By May, her stomach could no longer be hidden. Maria stopped coming up from the basement altogether. Olga brought her food, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Placed the plate on the table, took the empty one away. Did not say a word. Maria confessed she tried to talk to Olga several times, asked for help, asked her to at least call a doctor when the time came. Olga remained silent. Once Maria grabbed her hand, begged. Olga freed herself and left. On July 17th, contractions began. In the morning, Maria called out. Olga came down, looked, said, soon, left. Returned an hour later with a basin, towels, and sheets, made up the bed. Told Maria to lie down. Labor lasted 8 hours. Olga sat nearby. Told her what to do, when to push, when to breathe. She had no medical training, but she had given birth herself, knew the process. Maria described those 8 hours as the scariest of her life. The pain was unbearable. She screamed. Olga covered her mouth with her hand, said, "Quieter, the neighbors will hear." At 4 in the afternoon, Maria gave birth, a boy. Olga cut the umbilical cord with ordinary scissors, treated it with alcohol, wrapped the newborn in a towel, gave him to Maria, said, "Hold him," and went upstairs. Maria lay with the newborn in her arms. She didn't know what to do, how to feed him, how to hold him correctly. She was scared. She was 16 years old. An hour later, Victor came down, looked at the boy, said, "Healthy," took him from Maria, carried him upstairs. Maria didn't see him until the next morning. At night, she heard crying upstairs. The boy was crying.
Maria wanted to go up. The basement door was closed. Victor had locked it with a key, for the first time ever. In the morning, Olga brought the boy back, showed her how to breastfeed, left him with Maria for an hour, then took him away again. This continued for several days. Olga brought the boy for feeding, took him back. A week later, Victor and Olga went to the registry office, registered the birth, received the certificate. It stated Mother Olga, Father Victor. Maria officially became the older sister of her own son. When Maria asked why the boy didn't live with her downstairs, Victor explained. The boy would live upstairs with him and Olga. Maria would feed him while there was milk, then they would switch to formula. Her role would end. Maria tried to object, said she wanted to be near him. Victor replied curtly, "None of your business. You gave birth, your task is done." The following months, Maria fed the boy on schedule. Olga brought him 6 times a day. Maria fed him. Olga took him away. Maria couldn't even properly hold him, couldn't play with him, couldn't bathe him. Nothing. By 10 months, her milk ran out. Olga switched the boy to formula. Visits to the basement stopped. Maria continued to hear him upstairs. Crying, laughter, voice, but only saw him occasionally when Victor allowed her to go up to the kitchen. The boy grew up. He was taught to call Olga Mom, Victor Dad, Maria older sister. He didn't know the truth, couldn't know, because everyone around them maintained this lie. The documents were perfect. Birth certificate, Olga's medical record from the women's clinic, discharge summary from the maternity hospital. Victor obtained it through an acquaintance for money, simply bought a blank form and filled it out by hand. Everything looked legitimate. The system worked. Victor designed it so that every detail was in place. Officially, a family of 4 lived in the house. Father, mother, 2 children, an older daughter from a previous marriage, and a son. A normal picture. No questions. And this pattern was repeated 2 more times. In 2011, a second boy was born. In 2014, a girl. Each time following the same scenario. Each time Maria remained only the biological mother, deprived of the right to be a mother in reality. Investigators tried to understand how Victor managed to maintain this system for 15 years. The house stood on an ordinary street. Neighbors lived nearby. Mail came. The doorbell rang. How did he isolate the family so that no one noticed anything? They started with the neighbors, interviewed everyone who lived nearby between 2008 and 2023, recorded their testimonies. A picture began to emerge. The first neighbor, Valentina, lived in the house opposite. She said Victor always went grocery shopping, alone. Valentina saw him almost every day. He went to the store around 6 in the evening, returned an hour later, carried heavy bags. She rarely saw Olga. Once a week, maybe less often. She stopped seeing Maria altogether after 2008. Valentina recalled a conversation with Victor. It was in 2010. She met him near the entrance, asked, out of politeness, "How are things? How's the family?" Victor stopped, looked at her for a long time, then said, "The family's fine. That's all you need to know," and left. Valentina asked no more questions. The second neighbor, Pavel, lived in the same building. His apartment was 2 doors down from Victor's apartment. Pavel said there were almost no calls to their apartment. Usually, people communicate. Neighbors come for salt, for matches. No one went to Victor's, and they didn't go to anyone else's. Pavel recalled one moment. In 2013, a pipe burst in his apartment. Water started dripping to the downstairs neighbors. They came up. Pavel went to warn Victor. Maybe it's leaking to your place too. Knocked on the door. Victor opened it. Pavel began to explain the situation. Victor listened, said, "Everything is dry here." Closed the door. Pavel didn't even have time to finish his sentence. The third neighbor, Irina, lived on the floor above. She said there were almost no phone calls to their apartment. They had a landline phone. Irina sometimes heard it ring, but Victor always answered the phone, spoke briefly, ended the conversation quickly. Irina tried once to invite them to a party. It was in 2011, New Year. She decided to gather the neighbors, printed invitations, distributed them to the apartments. She gave one to Victor too. He took the paper, read it, said, "We won't come," returned the invitation. Irina was confused, asked maybe the children could at least come. Victor repeated, "We won't come," closed the door. Investigators found a document in the archives that interested them, a report of a social service visit dated April 15th, 2016. Reason for visit, an anonymous call. Someone called the social service hotline. Reported a strange situation in a family at a certain address. The family was isolated. The eldest daughter hadn't been seen for years. The three younger children rarely went outside, always supervised by their father. Social services sent 2 employees. They arrived in the afternoon, knocked on the door. Victor opened it. The employees introduced themselves, explained the reason for the visit, said they would like to inspect the living conditions and talk to family members. Victor refused, categorically, said, "You have no right to enter my house without my permission. I did not give permission. Leave." The employees tried to explain, said it was standard procedure, that they had authority. Victor pulled out his phone, said, "I'll call the prosecutor's office right now, complain about abuse of power. I will demand sanctions." The employees were confused, asked to at least see the younger children to make sure they were all right. Victor called them. The 3 appeared. Maxim was 7 then. The second, Artyom, was 5. The youngest, Sofia, was 2 years old. They stood in the hallway, looked at the employees. The employees asked, "How are things? Is everything good at home?" All 3 nodded, said, "Good." The employees asked Victor to call his eldest daughter. Victor replied, "She's not feeling well, sleeping. I can't wake her." One of the employees insisted, said it was important. Victor raised his voice, for the first time in the entire conversation, said, "I told you to leave. You have no reason to be here. If you don't leave now, I will really complain." The employees left. In the report, they wrote, "Living conditions could not be visually assessed. The younger children appear healthy. No external signs of ill treatment were found. The father exhibits aggressive behavior when intervention is attempted. A repeat visit with a representative from Child Protective Services is recommended." There was no repeat visit. The case was closed a month later. The conclusion stated, "The family is functioning normally. No grounds for intervention were found." Investigators in 2023 contacted one of those employees. The woman had already retired. She remembered that visit, said the man was very aggressive, not physically, but psychologically. He pressured them, created the impression that they were breaking the law, not him. "We decided then not to escalate. Now I understand that it was a mistake." Maria confirmed this visit. She said she heard the conversation upstairs, understood that social workers had come, wanted to scream, but the basement door was closed, and Victor was standing right over the stairs. She knew if she screamed, he would hear first, and the consequences would be serious. After the employees left, Victor came down to her, simply said, "See, they came. I sent them away. They won't come back. You are here forever." Investigators recorded the behavioral pattern. Victor aggressively defended his territory. Any attempt at external intervention met with strong resistance. He used the law as a shield, knew his rights, knew that without strong grounds no one could enter his house, and he used this. He went shopping himself, he answered calls himself, he opened the door himself.
He was the filter between his family and the outside world. Everything passed through him, and he decided what to let through and what not to. The system was closed, self-sufficient, and it worked precisely because Victor controlled every point of contact with reality. Investigators requested Victor's death certificate. The document arrived from the registry office. Date: February 15, 2023. Cause: myocardial infarction. Extensive. It happened at home. Olga called an ambulance, but it was already too late. The medical team arrived 15 minutes later, pronounced him dead, took him for examination. The autopsy confirmed acute heart failure.
No signs of external interference. Victor simply collapsed in the kitchen, clutched his chest, and it all ended in a few minutes. Investigators asked Maria to describe what happened after that moment. She agreed to give testimony. Maria said she was in her room when it happened, heard Olga scream upstairs, sharp, frightened, then quick footsteps. Maria went up the stairs. The basement door was open. Olga had forgotten to close it when she ran to the phone. Maria went into the hallway, saw Victor on the kitchen floor. He lay motionless. Olga stood next to the phone, talking to the ambulance operator. Maria froze, didn't know what to do. She approached closer, looked at Victor. His eyes were open, but empty. Maria understood. He was dead. She stood and watched, felt nothing. No relief, no joy, no sadness, just emptiness. The ambulance arrived. Maria quickly went back down to the basement, closed the door. Medics examined Victor, documented, took him away. Olga went with them
to handle the paperwork. Maria was left alone with the 3 younger children. Maxim was 14 then, Archim 12, Sophia 9. They sat in their rooms, quietly, didn't cry, didn't ask anything. They also didn't understand what to feel. Olga returned late in the evening. Maria heard her enter the house. Olga didn't come down to her, didn't say a word, just went to bed. The next 3 days, Maria spent in her room. The door was open, no one locked it anymore, but she didn't leave. Habit. Fear. For 15 years, she had lived by Victor's rules. Now Victor was gone, but the rules remained in her head. Olga brought food, as usual, 3 times a day, placed the plate on the table, took the empty one away, remained silent. Maria tried to talk several times, asked what would happen now. Olga didn't answer, left. On the 3rd day, Maria went upstairs, for the first time by herself, without permission, walked down the hallway, went into the kitchen. No one was there.
Olga had gone to the funeral, taken the 3 children with her. Maria was left alone in the house, sat in the kitchen, looked out the window, saw the street, people, cars. Life outside continued, and she was still here, in this house, in this cage, even when the person who created the cage was gone. Maria stood up, approached the front door, put her hand on the handle, tried to open it. The door opened. No one had locked it. She could leave, right now, just go out and leave. But she didn't leave. Closed the door, returned to the basement, sat on the bed. For 15 years she had been taught that the world outside was dangerous, that she wouldn't cope, that she had nowhere to go. Victor repeated this hundreds of times, and even now, when he was gone, she believed it. In the evening, Olga returned with the 3 younger children. The funeral was over. Victor was buried in the city cemetery. A simple ceremony. A few colleagues from the factory came, stood around, left.
Olga went upstairs to her room,
locked herself in, didn't come out until morning. The 3 children also went to their rooms. The house fell silent. Maria lay on the bed, thinking. For the first time in 15 years, she had a choice. She could stay here, continue to live the same way. Olga wouldn't kick her out. They would just continue to exist. Or she could try to change something. On the 4th day after Victor's death, Maria made a decision. She couldn't just leave. She didn't know where to go, didn't know how. But she could ask for help. She remembered there was an advertisement on TV, a help hotline, a number for those in difficult situations. Maria went upstairs, waited until Olga left for the store, approached the phone. The landline phone hung on the wall in the hallway. Maria looked at it for a long time. Her hand trembled. She picked up the receiver, dialed the number. Not on the first try, she forgot the last digits. Dialed again, heard ringing.
Then a female voice. "Help hotline, I'm listening." Maria was silent, didn't know where to start. The operator repeated, "I'm listening, please speak." Maria took a breath and began to speak. She told her story briefly. 15 years in the basement, father, 3 younger children. The operator listened, did not interrupt. When Maria finished, the operator said, "Stay on the line. I will connect you to the police now." A minute later, an officer was on the line. Maria repeated everything again, in more detail. The officer took notes, asked for the address. Maria gave it. The officer said, "We will come. Stay at home. We will be there soon." Maria hung up, sat on the floor in the hallway, understood she had done it. She had called. She had asked for help. For the first time in 15 years, she used her voice not to obey, but to free herself. The police arrived 2 hours later, the same officers who later compiled the first report. Maria opened the door herself, invited them inside. Told them everything. Showed them the house. Showed them her room in the basement. The officers listened, took notes, understood. This was the beginning of a big case. The system Victor had built for 15 years collapsed with one phone call. But the consequences of that system remained. Maria was 35, but psychologically much younger. The 3 younger children grew up in isolation. Olga kept silent and hid the truth for years. And now the investigation had to unravel all of this, understand how such a thing could have happened, and most importantly, understand if anyone other than the deceased Victor bore the responsibility for what happened. Investigators faced a problem. Maria's testimony was detailed, but it was only words. Evidence was needed, objective, scientific. Victor was dead. Interrogating him was impossible. There was only one way to verify the truth: genetic examination. The investigator filed a motion with the court, requested permission for exhumation. It was necessary to obtain Victor's biological material for comparative analysis. The court considered the request, approved it. The procedure was scheduled for June 5, 2023. The exhumation was carried out early in the morning. A special team arrived at the cemetery, forensic experts, a representative of the prosecutor's office, witnesses. The process took several hours. The remains were exhumed. Necessary samples were taken. Bone tissue, hair, teeth, everything that could provide quality genetic material. The material was sent to the laboratory. In parallel, samples were collected from the others. A buccal swab was taken from Maria's cheek mucosa, also from Maxime, Artyom, and Sophia. The procedure was simple, painless. A special stick is rubbed along the inside of the cheek. Cells are obtained. DNA is extracted from the cells. The laboratory began its work. Investigators explained to Maria how it works.
Every person receives half of their genetic material from their mother, half from their father. It's like a code, a unique set of markers. The examination compares the markers of the parent and the offspring. If a certain number of markers match, it confirms kinship. In this case, two hypotheses needed to be checked. First, was Victor Maria's biological father? Second, was Victor the biological father of Maxime, Artyom, and Sophia? If both hypotheses were confirmed, it would prove Maria's words. It would prove that Victor was simultaneously her father and the father of the three younger children. The examination took 3 weeks, a complex procedure. Victor's material was partially degraded. Several months had passed since the burial. Experts used special DNA restoration methods. They worked carefully, rechecked the results several times. While the examination was underway, investigators continued to gather other evidence. They questioned Olga again. She still refused to speak.
Sat silently, answered all questions in monosyllables. I don't know. I don't remember. Investigators understood. She was afraid. For 15 years she had lived next to Victor, obeyed him. The fear had not disappeared. Neighbors were questioned again. They looked for witnesses who might have seen something suspicious. They found one woman. She lived in the neighboring house. Recalled a moment from 2012. Late evening, she was returning home, heard a scream from Victor's house, a female voice, short, then silence. The woman then thought maybe the TV was loud, didn't pay attention. Now she regretted it. On June 25, 2023, the results arrived from the laboratory, the official conclusion of the examination. Investigators opened the envelope, read it. First part, comparative DNA analysis of Victor and Maria. Result, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Victor was Maria's biological father. This confirmed the first part of her story. Second part, comparative DNA analysis of Victor and Maxime. Result, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Victor was Maxime's biological father. Third part, comparative DNA analysis of Victor and Artyom. Result, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Victor was Artyom's biological father. Fourth part, comparative DNA analysis of Victor and Sophia. Result, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Victor was Sophia's biological father. Additional analysis. Comparison of Maria's DNA with Maxime, Artyom, and Sophia. Result, probability of maternity, 99.99% in each case. Maria was the biological mother of all three. The expert's conclusion was unequivocal. Victor was the biological father of both Maria and the three younger children, simultaneously. This meant that everything Maria had said was true. Victor was indeed the father of his own grandchildren. Genetic incest. Documented. Scientifically proven. Investigators attached the examination results to the case file. This was a key document.
The victim's testimony now had scientific confirmation. There was no doubt. Victor created a closed system, kept his own daughter in isolation, forced her to bear his children, registered the offspring as his legitimate heirs with another woman, and did this for 15 years. Maria was shown the results. She read the document, nodded, said, "I knew. I always knew. But now everyone knows." Investigators understood. The examination answered the question, what happened? But it did not answer the question, who is to blame besides Victor? Victor was dead. He could not be held accountable. But there was still Olga. She knew. She kept silent.
She helped hide it. She delivered the babies. She registered the younger children as her own. She was an accomplice. The next step was to be Olga's interrogation, but now with evidence, with the examination, with documents that could not be denied. Investigators prepared to charge her, not for what she did directly,
but for what she allowed to happen, for the silence that lasted a decade and a half and cost Maria the life she could have had. Olga was summoned for questioning on June 28, 2023. After receiving the examination results, her status had changed. Previously, she was a witness, now a suspect. Olga arrived at the department accompanied by a lawyer, a public defender. She couldn't afford a paid one. She sat opposite the investigator, hands clasped on her lap, looked at the table. The investigator turned on the voice recorder, announced the date, time, and participants of the interrogation, explained her rights. Olga nodded, understood. The lawyer sat next to her, silent. The first question was simple. What did you know about the origin of the 3 children who lived in your house? Olga answered quietly. They were adopted. My husband said he took them from an orphanage, one by one. Maxime in 2009, Artyom in 2011, Sofia in 2014. She just agreed, didn't ask questions.
The investigator recorded it, asked the next question. Why are you listed as the biological mother on the birth certificates of all 3? Olga hesitated, said, my husband processed the documents. She doesn't know how, just signed where he told her to. The investigator took out a folder, pulled out 3 birth certificates, placed them in front of Olga, showed the entries, mother, Olga, father, Victor, in all 3 documents. Asked, did you truly consider them adopted if you yourself signed as the mother? Olga was silent. The lawyer paused, asked for a few minutes for consultation. The investigator left the office, waited 10 minutes, returned. Olga changed her testimony, said yes, she knew they were officially registered as her biological children, but her husband explained it's simpler that way, less bureaucracy, easier to process. She believed him, didn't think it was important. The investigator continued, asked a direct question. You were present at the birth of all 3. You delivered them. Is this true? Olga nodded slowly. Yes, true. But she thought Maria was not the one giving birth. The investigator asked for clarification. Who was giving birth, in your opinion? Olga replied, I don't know. Maybe some women my husband arranged with, surrogate mothers. She didn't understand about that. The investigator recorded it, did not comment, asked the next question. Maria lived in the basement for 15 years, hardly ever left. You saw this. How do you explain it? Olga said, Maria was ill, mentally. My husband said it was better for her to be alone, less stress. The investigator asked, what exactly was Maria's diagnosis? Olga didn't know. Her husband didn't say, just said she's sick, needs rest. The investigator inquired, was Maria treated? Were there doctors, medicines? Olga shook her head. No, my husband said doctors weren't needed. Home rest was enough. The investigator noted the contradiction.
Asked, how can a mental illness be treated without doctors and medicines? Olga did not answer, just looked at the table. The investigator took out another document, the results of the genetic examination, placed it on the table, gave Olga time to read it. She read slowly, turned pale, her hands trembled. The investigator explained in simple terms. The examination proves Victor was Maria's biological father, and the biological father of Maxime, Artyom, and Sofia, simultaneously. Maria is the biological mother of all 3. This means that Victor had relations with his own daughter, and the 3 are the result of these relations. Olga was silent,
for a long time. The lawyer asked for another pause. The investigator agreed, left for half an hour. When the interrogation resumed, Olga sat with red eyes. She had been crying. The lawyer placed tissues in front of her. She wiped her face. The investigator repeated the question. "Did you know what was happening in your house?" Olga nodded.
Quietly, yes, I knew. She began to speak, slowly, with pauses. She recounted that she had guessed in 2009 when Victor brought her to deliver the baby. She saw Maria, pregnant, understood. But her husband said, "Keep silent. If you tell anyone, it will be worse, for Maria and for you." Olga confessed she was afraid. Victor was harsh, controlling. He never hit her, but she saw how he treated Maria. She knew he could do the same to her. The investigator asked, "Why didn't you contact the police, at least anonymously?" Olga replied, "I thought about it, many times, but I was afraid that Victor would find out, afraid that he would punish Maria, afraid to be left alone." Where was she to go? She had no job, no money, no relatives. The investigator recorded it, asked, "When the social workers came in 2016, you could have told them the truth. Why didn't you?" Olga replied, "My husband was standing nearby, heard everything. If she had said anything, he would have known. And then he would have punished her." The investigator asked the last key question. After Victor died, 3 months passed before Maria's statement. Why didn't you go to the police yourself? Victor was no longer there. He couldn't threaten you. Olga cried again, said, "I don't know. Habit, fear." She lived with it for 15 years, didn't know how to live differently, thought maybe everything would just work out on its own. Maria would calm down, forget, start a new life. The investigator concluded the interrogation, recorded the testimony. Olga confessed that she knew what was happening, knew from the very beginning, helped hide it, delivered the babies, registered the younger children as her own, kept silent when inspectors came, and continued to keep silent even after Victor's death. Her testimony that she didn't know the truth was false. She knew, and her silence was a choice, a conscious one. For 15 years, every day she made a choice to stay silent, not to intervene. Not to help. Fear was the reason. But fear did not absolve her of responsibility. The investigator understood. Now it was necessary to decide how to qualify Olga's actions. Accomplice, condoning, concealing a crime. Lawyers had to determine the exact wording of the charge. But one thing was clear. Olga was not just a witness. She was part of the system Victor created. And without her silence, this system could not have existed for so long. Investigators conducted a search of the house, seized personal belongings of all family members, documents, photographs, notes. Among Olga's belongings, they found a notebook, ordinary, checkered, old, pages yellowed, handwriting small, uneven. It was a diary. Olga had kept it since 2009, irregularly, sometimes an entry a week, sometimes nothing for months. Investigators sent the diary for examination, confirmed the handwriting belonged to Olga. They began to read. The first entry was dated June 20th, 2009, a month before Maxime's birth. Olga wrote, "Victor said a baby would soon appear in the house. Doesn't explain where from. Says, not my business. I just have to help. I'm afraid to ask." Next entry, July 18, 2009, the day after the birth.
Yesterday, Maria gave birth. I delivered the baby. Didn't want to, but Victor ordered it. Said, if you refuse, I'll kick you out. I have nowhere to go. I did what he said. I can't forget it. Maria screamed. I covered her mouth, afraid the neighbors would hear. Entry from August 3, 2009. Victor processed the documents, said, I'm officially the mother now. I signed the papers, didn't read them, just signed. He stood nearby, watching. Entry from October 15, 2010. Maria is pregnant again. Victor acts like everything is normal, as if it's an ordinary family. I can't bear to watch it, but I stay silent, always silent. Entry from January 2, 2011. Tried to leave today, packed a bag. Victor saw, didn't yell, just said, if you leave, I'll find you, and it will be worse. I believed him, unpacked the bag. Investigators read further. Entries became shorter, less frequent. In 2012, only 3 entries. In 2013, 2. In 2014, when Sophia was born, 1 long entry. 3rd time, I delivered again. Maria hardly screamed, got used to the pain. I got used to it too. Got used to being silent. Got used to being afraid. This is my life now. The last entry was dated March 10th, 2016, after the social worker's visit. Today, people from social services came. I could have told the truth. Victor was busy. They asked. I stayed silent. Why did I stay silent? Why? The diary confirmed Olga knew everything from the beginning, knew about Maria, knew about the 3 children, knew how they came into the world. But the entries also showed something else. She was afraid, constantly. Her fear was evident in every line. Investigators decided to dig deeper. They found Olga's relatives, a sister, a cousin, arranged a meeting. The sister, Natalia, lived in another city.
Came for questioning. She recounted Olga met Victor in 2006. She was 38 then. He was 5 years older. Victor pursued her persistently, called every day, came to her work. After 6 months, he proposed. Olga accepted. After the wedding, everything changed. Victor said that Olga should now quit her job, stay at home, manage the household. Olga tried to object, wanted to work. Victor insisted. She quit. Then he began to limit her contacts, said, "Your sister asks too many questions. Communicate with her less often." Olga started calling Natalia once a month, then once every 2 months, then stopped altogether. Natalia recalled her last conversation with her sister. It was in 2008. She called Olga, asked how she was. Olga answered briefly, "Fine." Natalia heard something in her voice, asked, "Is everything really all right?" Olga was silent, then said, "I have to go," and hung up. They didn't speak for 15 years after that. Natalia tried to visit several times.
Victor didn't let her into the house. Said, "Olga is busy, can't receive guests." Closed the door. Natalia called. Victor answered, said the same thing. Over time, Natalia stopped trying. Thought, maybe my sister herself doesn't want to communicate. The cousin, Mikhail, confirmed it. Olga stopped communicating with all relatives after her marriage, did not come to family celebrations, did not answer phone calls. Victor explained she has health problems, needs rest. Relatives did not insist. Investigators also interviewed Olga's former colleagues, those she worked with before her marriage. One of them, Sergei, recalled Olga was sociable, cheerful, participated in all events. After the wedding, she changed, became withdrawn, silent. 2 months later, she quit, said, "My husband is against me working." The psychologist studied all the materials, the diary, relatives' testimonies, Olga's own testimony, compiled a conclusion. Olga was in a state of dependence on Victor, psychological, emotional, financial. Victor isolated her from the outside world, deprived her of work, cut off ties with her family, created a situation where she was completely dependent on him. The psychologist noted signs of domestic control victim syndrome: fear, submission, inability to leave the situation even when an opportunity arises. Olga was a victim of the same system Victor created. But unlike Maria, Olga had freedom of movement. She could leave, technically. Investigators faced a complex question. On the one hand, Olga was a victim. Victor controlled her, intimidated her, isolated her. On the other hand, she committed crimes, concealment of facts, delivered babies without medical training, posing a threat to health, participated in document forgery, registered the younger children as her own, although she knew the truth, did not report to the police what was happening in the house. Lawyers reviewed the case, concluded Olga could be qualified as an accomplice on several counts.
Concealment of a crime, document forgery, possibly condoning. But her dependent position had to be considered as a mitigating circumstance. The investigator summoned Olga for a repeat interrogation, showed her the diary, asked, "Why did you keep notes if you were afraid your husband would find them?" Olga replied, "I hid it, among old things in the mezzanine. Victor didn't look there. I wrote when he was at work. I needed to vent, even on paper." The investigator asked, "You wrote about fear, about wanting to leave, but you didn't leave even after his death. Why?" Olga cried, said, "I don't know how to live differently. For 15 years I lived by his rules. Even when he was gone, the rules remained in my head." The investigator recorded the answers. The picture became clearer. Olga was both a victim and an accomplice. She suffered from Victor's control, but her silence allowed this system to exist. She was afraid.
But her fear did not absolve her of responsibility for signing false documents, delivering babies, and remaining silent during inspections. The law makes no exceptions for those who were afraid. The law evaluates actions, and Olga's actions were criminal, regardless of her motives. July 5, 2023. Olga was summoned for a third interrogation. This time, the investigator was thoroughly prepared. All evidence, all contradictions, all questions that needed answers. The interrogation was video recorded. The protocol was kept by 2 secretaries simultaneously. Olga arrived with the same lawyer, sat opposite the investigator, hands again clasped on her lap, her face pale. The investigator turned on the camera, announced the date, time, and participants. He began with a direct question, placed Maxime's birth certificate on the table, showed the mother column. Her name was there, her signature. Asked, "Did you sign this document? Did you know it was a lie?" Olga was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Yes, I knew." The investigator continued, "Why did you sign a document you knew was false?" Olga answered quietly, "He would have killed me. If I had refused, he would have killed me." The investigator clarified, "Did Victor threaten you with physical violence?" "Directly, with words." Olga shook her head. "Not with words, but I knew. I saw how he treated Maria. I understood. If I didn't obey, the same would happen to me." The investigator recorded it, asked the next question. "You helped deliver babies 3 times, in 2009, 2011, and 2014. You saw who was giving birth. You knew it was Maria." Olga nodded. "Yes, I knew." The investigator asked directly, "Did you understand what was happening?" Did you understand who Maria was pregnant by? Olga covered her face with her hands, spoke through her fingers. I understood. Understood from the first time. The investigator leaned forward. Then explain. Why didn't you call an ambulance? Why didn't you contact the police?
Why didn't you call social services? You had opportunities. Victor worked, left the house every day. You could have called at any moment. Olga removed her hands from her face, her eyes red, said, I was afraid. Every day I was afraid. He controlled everything, checked phone calls, counted the money in my wallet, asked where I went, who I talked to. I couldn't do anything discreetly. The investigator objected. In 2016, social workers came to your house. Victor was busy, stood by the door. You could have told them the truth, quietly, in a whisper, written a note, anything, but you stayed silent. Why? Olga cried, spoke through tears. I was afraid not only for myself. I was afraid for Maria, afraid that if I told them and the social workers left, he would kill her. He was capable of it. I saw his eyes. The investigator gave her time to calm down, handed her tissues, waited a minute, continued. He asked about the births. You had no medical training. You delivered babies 3 times.
You understood the risks, that there could be complications, that both mother and infant could die. But you did it. Why didn't you insist on calling doctors? Olga replied, I tried. During the first birth, I tried to convince Victor to call an ambulance. He refused. He said, you'll manage yourself, or there will be consequences. I understood there was no choice. The investigator clarified. And during the second birth? During the third? Did you try to insist again? Olga shook her head. No, I already knew the answer. It was useless to ask. The investigator took out Olga's diary, opened it to a bookmark, read aloud an entry from January 2nd, 2011. Tried to leave today. Packed my bag. Victor saw me. He didn't yell. He just said, if you leave, I'll find you, and it will be worse. I believed him. Unpacked my bag. The investigator looked at Olga, asked, Did you write this? Olga nodded. I did. The investigator continued, You tried to leave. That means you understood you could leave.
Physically. But you stayed, because he threatened you. But think, if you had left, contacted the police, told them everything, he would have been arrested. He wouldn't have been able to find you. He wouldn't have been able to harm you. Olga was silent for a long time. Then she said quietly, I didn't think about it then. I was just scared. Fear doesn't allow one to think logically. The investigator nodded, wrote it down, asked another question. 3 months had passed since Victor's death. He was no longer there. The threat was gone. Why didn't you go to the police yourself? Why did you wait for Maria to call? Olga replied, I don't know. I really don't know. Habit. I got used to being silent, got used to being afraid. Even after he was gone, I continued to live as if he was still here, as if he was still in control. The investigator moved to the key point, asked, Do you understand that your actions were criminal? Regardless of your motives, you participated in document forgery.
Concealed the crime. Did not provide assistance to the victim. All of these are violations of the law. Olga nodded. I understand. Now I understand. The investigator clarified. Do you admit your guilt in these actions? Olga nodded again. I do. The lawyer intervened. Asked to clarify, his client admits guilt in concealment and forgery, but insists that she acted under duress, psychological, prolonged. This should be considered a mitigating circumstance. The investigator recorded the lawyer's position, continued the interrogation. He asked Olga directly, Do you regret keeping silent? Olga cried again, spoke through tears. I regret it every day. Every single day. I could have helped Maria, could have saved her, but I didn't.
I can't forgive myself for that." The investigator let her speak, then asked one last thing. If you could go back in time, to any moment, to 2009, to 2016, to any, what would you do differently? Olga wiped away her tears, looked at the investigator.
Said, "I would have called the police. On the very first day, when I understood what was happening, I wouldn't have waited. I wouldn't have been afraid. I would have just called, and it all would have ended much earlier." The investigator nodded, wrote down the last answer, finished the interrogation, turned off the camera. Said, "In 2 days you will be officially charged, under the articles concealment of a crime and forgery of documents. Your lawyer will receive all materials." Olga stood up. The lawyer did too. They left the office. The investigator remained alone. He reread the protocol. Everything was documented. The confession, the explanation of motives, the regret. The picture was complete. Olga was indeed afraid of Victor. He controlled her life, isolated her from the world, created an atmosphere of constant threat. But fear did not justify inaction. For 15 years she had opportunities to stop this, to call, to write, to tell someone, but each time she chose silence.
And her silence cost Maria 15 years of her life. The investigator understood the court would decide how justified her fear was, how much it could mitigate the punishment. But facts remained facts. Olga was an accomplice, not the main one, not the initiator, but an accomplice, and by law she had to bear responsibility for her choice to remain silent instead of helping. During the house search, investigators seized many items: documents, records, personal belongings. Among them, they found an old photo album, thick, leather-bound. It was in Victor's room, in the wardrobe, on the top shelf, behind a stack of clothes. The investigator opened the album. The first photo was dated August 2009. Maxime, an infant, lying on a blanket, a typical newborn picture. The investigator turned the page. September 2009. Maxime had grown a little. The photo was taken in the same room. In the background, part of the interior was visible. Simple furniture, bare walls.
The investigator recognized this room. It was the living room on the first floor of that house. October 2009, November, December. A photo for each month. Maxime grows, changes. In some pictures, Olga is next to him, holding him, smiling at the camera. January 2010. A new figure appeared in the photo. Maria. She is sitting on the couch. Maxime is next to her. She is 19 years old. In the photo, she looks emaciated, pale. Her hair is dull. Her eyes are empty. She isn't smiling. She's just sitting. The investigator continued to flip through. The photos were in chronological order, each month, sometimes 2 or 3 shots. Victor meticulously documented Maxime's growth, as he did everything else in his life. 2011. Artem appeared, an infant. The same angles, the same room. Maxime is now a 2-year-old toddler, standing next to Artem. In one photo, Maria is holding both. Her face is even more drawn, dark circles under her eyes. She is 21 years old. She looks 30.
The investigator paid attention to the background details. All photos were taken inside the house. Living room, kitchen, sometimes the hallway. Not a single shot outside. No yard, no park, no playground. Only the confined space of the house. 2012, 2013. Maxime and Artem grow. In the photos, they are playing, sitting at a table, sleeping. Ordinary documentation of life, but the setting is always the same. 4 walls, 1 house. Maria appears in the pictures rarely,
once every few months. When she does appear, the changes are noticeable. 2012, she is even thinner. 2013, she developed a stoop, shoulders slumped, gaze fixed on the floor. 2014, Sophia was born. New infant pictures. Maxime is 5 years old. Artem is 3. They stand next to Sophia, smiling. Maria holds Sophia in several photos. She is 24 years old. She looks 40. Gray hair, deep wrinkles, gray skin. The investigator continued to examine the album. The photos went up to 2022. The last shot was dated December.
2 months before Victor's death. All 3 of them are in it. Maxime, 13 years old. Artem, 11. Sophia, 8. They stand in the living room, not smiling, just standing. The camera captured them, like exhibits. The investigator counted. There were over 300 photos in the album. 13 years of life, meticulously documented, month after month, year after year. Victor created a visual chronology of his crime. The album was sent for examination. The authenticity of the photos was checked. It was confirmed that there was no montage. Everything was real. A photography expert confirmed the pictures were taken at different times. The dating corresponded to what was indicated. The background setting matched what was recorded in the house during the search. The investigators showed the album to Maria, asked her to comment. Maria flipped through silently. She stopped at some pictures, looked at them for a long time. She pointed to a photo from 2010.
She said, "This was after Victor first locked me in the basement for 3 days. Punishment for trying to talk to Olga about escaping. The photo shows I am exhausted. I hadn't eaten for 3 days." She pointed to a picture from 2013. She said, "Here I look especially bad. I was pregnant with Sophia then. The toxemia was severe. I was losing weight instead of gaining it." She pointed to a photo from 2018. There she is holding Sophia. She is 30 years old. She looks 50. She said, "I remember that day. Victor forced me to come upstairs. He said a family photo is needed. He positioned me, gave Sophia to me, took the photo, took Sophia back, sent me back downstairs. It all took 5 minutes." Investigators studied each photograph as evidence. The pictures confirmed several key facts. First, all 3 grew up in this house from birth. Not a single photo outside the house. Not a single sign that they were brought from somewhere else. They were always here.
Second, Maria was constantly present in their lives, although she rarely appeared in the frame. But when she did, it was her. With infants, with toddlers, with older children. She was part of this system, by force, but she was. Third, visual confirmation of the deterioration of her condition. The chronology was clear. 2009, young but already emaciated. 2014, premature aging. 2020, complete exhaustion. The photos showed how 15 years in isolation physically destroyed a person. Investigators attached all the pictures to the case, numbered them, compiled a detailed description of each, dating, location of the shot, those present in the photo, visible details of the setting. The album became undeniable visual evidence. Documents could be forged, testimonies could be disputed, but the photographs spoke for themselves. They showed the reality. The 3 grew up in a confined space. Maria was with them. Her condition deteriorated year after year, and Victor recorded all of this.
Like a collector documenting his collection. The psychologist studying the case noted a strangeness.
Victor created a family album. Like ordinary parents, he photographed infants, their first steps, first smiles, an ordinary chronicle of childhood. But behind each photo lay a crime. Behind each smile, coercion. Behind each moment of growth, years of isolation and control. Victor created an illusion of normalcy, documented it meticulously. Perhaps he even believed in it himself. The photo album completed the picture. Now the investigation had a full set of evidence. Genetic examination, the victim's testimony, Olga's confession, diary entries, and a visual chronology of the crime created by the perpetrator himself. Everything pointed in one direction. Everything confirmed Maria's words. There were no doubts left. Investigators ordered a posthumous psychological examination. Victor could not be interrogated, but they could try to understand who he was, what drove him.
Why he created such a system and maintained it for 15 years. An experienced expert was chosen, a doctor of psychological sciences, specialization criminal psychology. He had worked with serial killers, with domestic tyrants, with people who created closed systems of control. All case materials were handed over to the expert: Maria's testimony, Olga's testimony, Olga's diary, work references, neighbors' testimonies, the photo album, documents, everything that had been collected over months of investigation. The expert studied the materials for 3 weeks. He pieced together Victor's personality profile from indirect data. On July 15, 2023, the expert presented his conclusion, a 30-page document, a detailed analysis of personality, motivation, psychological mechanisms, behavioral patterns. The investigator read the conclusion carefully. The main findings were as follows. Victor exhibited signs of narcissistic personality disorder.
This meant he considered himself special, superior to others, entitled to set rules. Others existed to satisfy his needs, not as individuals, but as objects. The expert noted characteristic traits: lack of empathy. Victor could not feel another's pain, did not understand the suffering of others. For him, Maria was not a daughter, not a person with feelings, just a part of his world, which he controlled at his discretion. Pedantry. Victor controlled every detail: workplace, home life, the lives of family members, the photo album. Everything had to be ordered, according to his rules. Chaos was unacceptable. Order, an absolute requirement. Sadistic tendencies. The expert used this term cautiously, explained in detail. Victor derived satisfaction from control, from power over others, from creating a system where his word was law. Physical coercion was a tool, not an end in itself, but a tool he used without hesitation. The expert analyzed the motivation, why Victor did exactly this,
Why he created such a system. The conclusion was as follows. Victor built his own microcosm, a place where he was the absolute ruler. At work, he was an ordinary locksmith, obeyed his superiors, followed others' rules. But at home he created a kingdom where only he set the rules. Maria became the first victim of this system. Why her specifically? The expert explained. She was vulnerable, dependent. A teenager could not leave on her own, had no means of subsistence, did not know where to turn. Victor understood this, exploited it. Maria's isolation began gradually. October 2008, ban on school. November, ban on leaving the house. December, complete isolation. Victor tested the system, checked how far he could go. and when he saw that no one interfered, he understood. He could go as far as he wanted. The birth of the 3 younger children. The expert analyzed this aspect as well. For Victor, this was not about procreation in the usual sense. It was proof of power. He created people, controlled their existence from the very first second. They knew no other life. For them, his rules were the natural order of things. The expert noted Victor was not psychotic. He did not suffer from hallucinations, did not lose touch with reality. He fully understood what he was doing, knew it was illegal, knew it caused suffering, but chose to do it, consciously, because his need for power was stronger than any moral or legal constraints. The comparison with his work was illustrative. At the factory, Victor was an exemplary worker. He did not break rules, arrived on time, performed tasks well. Why? Because at work, others set the rules, and violations threatened consequences, dismissal, fines. The risk was real. Therefore, he obeyed. At home, there was no risk. No one checked, no one saw. He could set any rules, and he did. He created a world corresponding to his ideas of order, of power, of control. The expert emphasized a key point. Victor's actions were not the result of affect. They were not spontaneous. They were not a reaction to external circumstances. This was a long-term strategy, systematic, deliberate, maintained for years. The expert's conclusion clearly classified Victor: a pathological need for power, narcissistic disorder, sadistic tendencies, altogether created a man capable of turning his own home into a prison and family members into hostages of his psychology. The investigator attached the conclusion to the case. Now the picture was complete, not only factually, but also psychologically. It was clear not only what happened, but why. Victor was not a monster from fairy tales. He was a man with a serious personality disorder who was given the opportunity to realize his pathological needs, and he used that opportunity to the fullest. And the system, law enforcement, social, educational, failed to stop him in time. Investigators gathered all materials, all dates, all events. A complete picture needed to be compiled to understand how the system worked from beginning to end. They created a graphical timeline, 15 years on one large sheet of paper, each key event marked, every point of contact with the outside world recorded. The first point on the timeline, October 2008, Maria stops attending school. She is 15 years old. Victor informs the school about her illness, provides medical certificates. The school formally closes the issue. No one checks further. This was the first step. Isolation began. Maria was cut off from peers, from teachers, from everyone who might notice changes. November 2008, ban on leaving the house. Victor takes Maria's phone, keys to the door. She can no longer contact the outside world on her own. Attempts to resist are met with physical coercion. Maria understands there is no choice. December 2008, complete isolation. Maria is moved to a room in the basement, lives there permanently, only goes out under supervision. Victor sets rules, strict ones. Violations are punished. The system begins to operate. Second point, January 2009. Maria is pregnant. Victor is not surprised, develops a plan of concealment. Olga will go to the women's clinic, obtain documents. Maria will stay home. The birth will take place at home, without doctors, without witnesses. March 2009, the first external intervention, a police visit at the school's request. Victor meets the officers calmly, invites them into the house, shows medical certificates, calls Maria. She comes out, answers questions in monosyllables.
says everything is fine. The police leave. The case is closed. The system passed its first test. It held up. July 2009. Third point. The birth of Maxime. The birth takes place at home. Olga assists, without medical training. Maria gives birth in the basement. She screams. Olga covers her mouth, afraid that the neighbors will hear. Maxime comes into the world. Victor takes him upstairs. A week later, registration. Victor and Olga go to the registry office. They process the birth certificate. Mother, Olga. Father, Victor. The first document forgery is complete. Maria officially becomes the older sister of her own son. The system expands. Now it contains not 2 people, but 3. 2009-2011, daily routine. Victor goes to work, returns home, controls every aspect of family life. Maria lives in the basement, feeds Maxime according to schedule. Then the milk runs out. Contact with Maxime decreases. She hears him upstairs, but barely sees him. Fourth point, November 2011. The birth of Artem. The same scenario. Birth at home. Olga assists. Registration at the registry office. Olga is again listed as the mother. Second forgery. The system has been running for 3 years. No failures, no interventions. 2012-2014, the system strengthens. Neighbors see an ordinary family. Father, mother, 3 younger children, an older daughter who almost never leaves the house. Strange, but not enough to intervene. Victor meticulously photographs the younger ones, creates a family album, an illusion of normalcy. May 2014, the birth of Sophia. Third birth, third document forgery. Maria gives birth for the 3rd time. She is 24 years old, looks 40. The system reached its peak. 3 younger children, all registered as descendants of Victor and Olga. All live in the house. Maria in the basement, the others upstairs. April 2016, 5th point. A visit from social services. An anonymous call. Employees arrive. Victor meets them aggressively, does not let them into the house. Shows the 3 younger children. They look healthy, say everything is fine. The employees ask to see the older daughter. Victor refuses, threatens with a complaint. The employees leave. The case is closed. The system passes a second check. Again, it holds up. 2016 to 2023, the final stage. Maxime, Artem, and Sophia grow up. Maria ages prematurely. Victor maintains control. Olga remains silent. The system functions stably. 7 years without interventions, without checks, without questions. 6th point, February 15th, 2023. Victor dies. Heart attack. At home. Unexpectedly. The system loses its main element, the one who created and maintained it. Maria remains in the basement, out of habit. Fear does not disappear instantly. February 18th, 2023. The 7th and final point. Maria calls a helpline. For the first time in 15 years, she uses a phone on her own, tells everything, asks for help. The system collapses, not gradually, instantly. 1 call and 15 years of secrets begin to come out. Investigators looked at the compiled timeline. The picture was clear. This was not a series of individual crimes. It was a single system, meticulously constructed, maintained for years, with clear defense mechanisms. Victim isolation, document forgery, information control, aggressive defense against external checks, creating an illusion of normalcy for others.
Everything worked like clockwork. Victor thought through every element, every line of defense. The outside world saw an ordinary family, reclusive but not criminal, strange but not enough to cause alarm. Twice the system faced checks, twice it successfully passed them, because Victor knew how to answer questions, what documents to show, how to create an appearance of legality. And inside the house, another reality existed, where Maria lived in the basement, where 3 children were raised in isolation, where one person set the rules. And this reality was completely invisible from the outside. 15 years, until the creator of the system himself disappeared. And only then did the truth get a chance to come out. Olga's trial began on October 15, 2023. City Court, 2nd floor, hall number 3. Journalists filled all the press seats. The case attracted attention. Such stories rarely make the news. Olga was escorted into the hall. She looked older than her 56 years.
Her hair was gray. Her face was drawn. She sat on the defendant's bench, folded her hands on her lap, looked down. The judge read out the indictment. Olga was charged under 3 articles. First, complicity in a crime. Second, concealment of a crime from authorities. Third, document forgery. The prosecutor requested 8 years of imprisonment. The trial lasted 5 days. Witnesses were called. Testimonies were read out. Evidence was presented. The prosecutor spoke first. He built the accusation clearly. Olga knew about what was happening since 2009, helped deliver births 3 times, signed false documents at the registry office, remained silent during the police visit in 2009, remained silent during the social services visit in 2016, had many opportunities to report the truth, did not do so a single time. The prosecutor emphasized Olga was not physically locked up. She could leave the house, went to the store, had access to a phone, could contact anyone, anonymously.
In writing, any way she wanted, but she chose silence for 15 years. The prosecutor read excerpts from Olga's diary. The entries showed she understood what was happening, understood it was a crime, but continued to help, assisted in births, registered the younger children as her own, supported the system. The prosecutor concluded, fear does not absolve responsibility. Fear explains motivation, but it does not negate actions. The defendant committed crimes, consciously, repeatedly. She must bear the punishment. The defense lawyer spoke next. His argumentation was different. He spoke about the syndrome of a victim of domestic control. Olga was under psychological pressure for 15 years. Victor isolated her from relatives, deprived her of work, created financial dependence, intimidated her. Olga feared not only for herself, she feared for Maria. She thought that if she reported him, Victor would kill Maria. The lawyer presented the psychologist's conclusion.
The expert confirmed Olga exhibited signs of prolonged psychological suppression. The fear was real, justified. Victor was indeed capable of physical coercion. The lawyer read out the testimonies of Olga's relatives. They described how she changed after marriage, became withdrawn, stopped communicating. These were signs of isolation. Victor controlled her just as he controlled Maria, just by different methods. The lawyer concluded, "My client is a victim of the same system as Maria. Yes, she committed actions that are formally crimes, but she did not act of her own free will. She acted under duress. This should be taken into account when passing sentence." The judge gave the floor to Olga, asked did she want to say something. Olga stood up, spoke quietly, but firmly. She said, "Yes, I am guilty. I knew. I was silent. I helped conceal. Every day I made a choice, the wrong choice. I was afraid, but fear is not an excuse. Maria was more afraid, and I could have helped.
But I didn't. There is no forgiveness for that." Olga sat down. The hall was silent. The judge announced an hour-long break, then called Maria into the hall. She was to testify as a victim. She had the right to read a statement. Maria entered the hall, walked to the stand, stood straight, did not look at Olga, read her statement. She said, "For 15 years I lived in the basement. Every day I hoped someone would help. Olga was nearby. Every day she saw. She knew. Several times I asked her to call the police. She refused. I understand that she was afraid, but I was more afraid, and I was alone, and she could have left. I could not." Maria continued, "I don't want revenge. I'm not demanding the maximum punishment, but I want justice. Olga must be held accountable, not for what she did to Victor, but for what she didn't do for me. She didn't help when she could have." Maria finished, sat down in the victim's seat. The judge thanked her for her testimony.
The closing arguments concluded. The judge retired for deliberation. After 3 hours, he returned, read the verdict. The court found Olga guilty on all 3 charges: complicity, concealment, forgery. The court took into account mitigating circumstances, psychological pressure from Victor, no prior convictions, admission of guilt, remorse. But the court also considered the gravity of the crime. 15 years of silence, 3 instances of document forgery, 2 instances of silence during checks, many opportunities to stop the crime. None were used. The judge announced the sentence: 5 years of imprisonment, general regime colony. The sentence will come into force after the appeal period expires. Olga heard the sentence standing. She did not cry, she just nodded. The convoy led her out of the hall. The trial was over. Maria left the courthouse. Journalists surrounded her, asked questions. She answered briefly. She said, "Justice has prevailed, partially."
Victor avoided punishment, but Olga will bear responsibility for her part. This is important, not for revenge, but so that others see silence is also a crime. Olga's sentence marked the end of the legal part of the story. Victor could not be tried. He died. But the system he created was fully documented, disassembled, condemned. And now one last question remained. What would happen next to those who survived this system? To Maria, to Maxime, Artem, and Sophia. How to rebuild life after 15 years in isolation. After the trial, Child Protective Services took control of the situation. Maria and the 3 children needed help, urgently, comprehensively. They couldn't simply be left to live on after what had happened. The first step was a change of names. Maria submitted an application to the registry office. She wanted to start anew, with everything, including her name. It was approved. Maxime, Artem, and Sophia also received new names. The documents were processed in 3 weeks.
The old birth certificates were annulled. New ones were issued, with new data. In the new documents, Maria was listed as the mother of all 3, officially, legally. Father, not specified. The field was empty. That's how she wanted it. No mentions of Victor. No ties to the past. Child Protective Services organized psychological assistance. They found specialists, psychologists working with victims of prolonged isolation, with people who survived domestic control, with those who lived for years in a closed system. Maria began attending sessions twice a week. The first months were difficult. She didn't know how to talk about feelings. For 15 years she'd been taught to be silent, to obey, not to express emotions. It took time for the psychologist to teach her to speak, to explain what she felt, to name it with words. Gradually, Maria began to open up. She talked about her fears, about how she was afraid to go outside, how she panicked in crowds, how she woke up at night from nightmares. The psychologist worked with each fear separately, step by step, helped her overcome them. Maxime, Artem, and Sophia also received help. Their case was more complex. They grew up in isolation, knew no other life. Maxime was 14, Artem 12, Sophia 9. All three were poorly socialized, didn't know how to interact with peers, didn't understand basic social norms. The psychologist worked with them separately, explained how the outside world works, how to communicate with people, how to behave at school, what was allowed, what was not. Basic things that ordinary people learn automatically. The three had to learn these specifically. But the most difficult thing was to tell them the truth about who their real parents were, who Maria was to them, who Victor was. Psychologists prepared for this conversation for weeks, decided how to tell, how to explain, how to minimize trauma. The conversation took place in November 2023. The psychologist, a social worker, and Maria were present. Maxime, Artem, and Sophia were told. Maria, not a sister. She is their mother, biological. Olga is not their mother. Victor was their father, but he was also their grandfather, because Maria is his daughter. The reactions were varied. Maxime was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "So everything we knew was a lie?" The psychologist nodded. Yes, a lie that Victor created. Maxime didn't ask any more questions that day. Artem cried. He didn't understand how it was possible. The psychologist explained for a long time, patiently, answered every question. Artem gradually began to understand, not to accept, but to understand. Sophia was the youngest. It was explained to her in a simplified way. They said, "Maria is your real mother. Olga was another person." Sophia asked, "Why didn't Maria speak?" The psychologist replied, "Because she couldn't. She was forced to be silent." The following months were difficult. All three went through stages of acceptance, denial, anger, misunderstanding. Psychologists worked with each individually, helped them cope, explained that it was normal to feel, that it was normal to be angry, that it was normal not to understand. Gradually, Maxime, Artem, and Sophia began to build new relationships with Maria, not as a sister, but as a mother. It was strange for everyone. Maria didn't know how to be a mother. She'd been deprived of that opportunity for 15 years. But she learned, she tried, and the three children tried too. The house on the quiet street was sold in December 2023. Maria couldn't live there. Too many memories. Every room reminded her, especially the basement. She asked Child Protective Services to arrange the sale. The money went towards new housing, towards rehabilitation, towards the future of the three children. A new apartment was found in a different district, a 3-room one, bright, on the 3rd floor, with large windows.
Maria specifically chose one with windows, to have light, to see the street, to not feel confined. Maxim, Artem, and Sophia were enrolled in school, a regular one, in their new residential area. The teachers were warned
These three had a special situation. An individual approach was needed. The teachers agreed. They helped. Didn't ask unnecessary questions. Gave them time to adapt. The first months at school were difficult. All three didn't know how to communicate, shied away from classmates, sat separately, didn't participate in general activities. But gradually they began to open up. First acquaintances appeared, first conversations, small steps, but steps forward. Maria also learned to live anew. For the first time in 15 years, she could go outside whenever she wanted, go wherever she wanted, talk to whomever she wanted. It was unfamiliar, scary, but she tried. Every day she did something new, went to the store, to the park, to the library. She learned to be free.
Child Protective Services processed documents for personal data protection. New names, new address, new identity. Everything was classified. Journalists couldn't find them. No one could disturb them. The law protected the victims, gave them the opportunity to start anew without constant reminders of the past. By mid-2024, the situation had stabilized. Maria continued to see the psychologist, but less often. Once a week, then once every 2 weeks. Progress was noticeable. She learned to cope with panic, learned to leave the house without fear, learned to smile. Maxime, Artem, and Sophia also progressed. Friends appeared at school. Maxime joined a computer club, became interested in programming. Artem started playing sports, ran in the mornings. Sophia enrolled in drawing classes, drew bright pictures. The psychologist said, "This is a good sign. They are finding ways to express themselves." The story didn't end with a fairy tale happy ending. This was reality. Scars remained.
Psychological, emotional. Maria will never forget 15 years in the basement. Maxim, Artem, and Sophia will always remember that they grew up in isolation, that their origin is unusual, traumatic. But they got a chance to live on, a chance to build a future, not as victims of the system Victor created, but as people who survived it and are moving forward. Slowly, with help, with support. But they are moving. And that was already more than they had a year ago when Maria sat in the basement and thought there was no way out.